celebrate the release of his book, 6 Plays, which will be on sale after the performance downstairs. But it's just a great group of plays, and I'm so glad you're here to celebrate with me. Congratulations.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Mickle and I, as it happens, have the same publisher. My book is on Ensemble, and what's really cool to us is that we have the same publisher. As I said, it's Aga Publishing, and we just launched. I'm going to call you out. Doug Seibel, the president of the publisher. So thank you. Thank you. Mickle and I, we were aware of each other's books, and so I called him up and said, we ought to just get together and talk about how that experience was for you. And so we did that in Evanston, and we started thinking about, wouldn't it be cool to do some sort of event together? And what we wanted to focus on is, because Mickle kept talking about this and it interested me, focus on this cluster, this small cluster of theater companies in the 80s. They had like kind of a unique style of performance and of writing, and even of how they operate, kind of in common. For example, there's this consensus way of approaching a rehearsal. If you look at Mickle's plays, I don't think there's any that has a director.
Oobleck worked without a director.
Oobleck worked without a director? The other thing is how you get into those theaters. Oobleck was
Or if you got it, free if you're broke.
Free if you're broke. Curious was, Jenny?
Pay what you can.
Pay what you can. And Neo-Futurist was, did we remember?
Yes.
Roll the dice.
Roll the dice.
Roll the dice plus $1. And then that went up to like $9. But the theaters that we're talking about tonight, and that we want to take you back to that time and think about, are Prop Theater, 1981, Curious Theater Branch, Rhino Fest, Theater Oobleck, Looking Glass, Plasticine, Red Moon, Cardiff Giant. Those are the ones that we're focused on, okay? And we're really lucky because we have with us some of the people who helped make it happen, who were there at the inception. And so they're going to share their stories, and we welcome your stories as well. So thank you for being here. I'm really excited about it. Mickle, do you want to introduce the reading?
Yeah. So what we're going to do is, for me, the focus, I'm a very unfocused person, but the way I tried to focus myself for this was to think about specifically the group of theaters that all formed within a year of Oobleck coming to Chicago. We came here in 1988. Within that year, the Neo-Futurists, the Looking Glass Theater, Curious Theater, Cardiff Giant, and who am I forgetting? All appeared on the scene. At Red Moon Theater.
Go Diamond.
Well, Go Island was a few years later, as was Plasticine. But not to shut them up, but yes, the Goat Island, Plasticine, there was sort of a second wave that came after. But I wanted to think about how did those groups influence my work, and because you sort of take your influences for granted, you just sort of, it's like the air that you breathe, and 30 plus years later, I'm looking at my work and I'm thinking, that first couple of magical years when that cluster of groups were working, and I was seeing a lot of their work, it really impacted me, and I tried to think as best I could as how they influenced me. And I'm firmly convinced that they did, and that my work still bears their DNA or their fingerprints. So what we wanted to do tonight was to talk about that, talk about the influence of that cluster of theater groups, but sort of through the lens of the plays that I've written over the last 30 years. So we're going to do an extended cut from my most recent play, It Is Magic, which was performed down in the basement here at Chopin. Some of you might I think it's fairly representative of my work, and then if my theory holds, is representative of a lot of this work that appeared in the final year of the 80s in Chicago theater. that I still insist is its own sort of style at school. Anyway, for a refresher for those who saw It Is Magic, and for those of you who didn't, the play takes place in an audition room in a windowless basement. Picture the downstairs of the show of a small community theater somewhere in the American Midwest. Cullen O'Reilly plays Ken. He plays Ken, the theater's artistic director, and Diana Slickman, Laura T. Fisher plays. It's like the Carol Burnett show. Just like all for applause. All right. Diana and Laura play two sisters, Deb and Sandy. Deb and Sandy, who have toiled thanklessly as low-level theater office staff for the last 20 years, and are aspiring now to put up Deb's first play, an adaptation for adult audiences of The Three Little Pigs. Upstairs on the main stage, Ken's opening night production of Macbeth is going on. Heather Reardon, where's Heather? Plays Elizabeth, who comes into the scene later. And we're going to start this scene, we sort of pick up the action almost midway through the play, and nothing particularly unusual has happened yet.
Sandy, let's see your audition for Deb's play. No, I know you want the lead, the wolf, right? I know your sister isn't keen on that, but maybe, as I'm so brilliant, I could persuade her otherwise if I like what you're doing.
Which you won't. You never have.
I do like it. I always have. But I think we're in uncharted seas now. With your sister's play, you two have a bond, everyone sees it. I think you might have a unique intuition for her writing, which I have read. But still, I've got a feeling.
She wants me as pig of sticks.
A crucial role.
And I want to see her try the wolf. For me.
Well, I'm really set on Tim.
For me.
All right. I trust your instinct. Go ahead, Sandy.
Only for you.
Sammy, please put the history of me not casting you in any role for 20 years. Just put that out of your head. Make a little clearing in the brambles of resentment in there, and just give this a shot.
For you.
From where Tim left off. This is just after the wolf has destroyed the House of Straw, and he's
I'm
about
familiar with the tale.
Right. Go ahead, Sandy.
Sandy takes the stage.
I'm Sandy Chandler, and I'll be doing The Wolf from an adaptation for adult audiences of Three Little Pigs by Deborah Chandler.
Just go.
In a moment it was done. The house of straw, its towers and battlements, its great dome, swept away in a pale cold, and its pig lay flat and trembling, his snout in the dirt at my front paws.
Good. Four, please.
I can't.
Please, please. Come on.
We were both of us surprised. The first surprise of the world. In the shock of it, before I could apologize, he, flustered in his humiliation, ran for his brother's house, seeking consolation for his loss, I suppose. I followed him to make amends, to assure him I had had no intention of destroying his home, that I only wanted a friend. But he reached the stick house and disappeared inside its twiggy confusion, a vast espalier maze of pear and apple trees that ran over the ground for miles in all directions. My yearning for companionship was fled into its labyrinth. I wept. I called out, called, within hoping for some understanding. Please, please, let me. But from the dim corridors of leaves and forking branches, the brothers grunted out the same strange refusal rhyme of chins and whiskers. I was sick with longing, and would bury myself in my shame there at the doorstep. But again, unbidden, the impossible cyclone rose in my lungs, twofold strong, fueled now by double refusal, and it brought that house low. In a scratch, it was splinters not fit for kindling. And for a moment, the three of us, big of straw, of sticks and I, were together. With no walls, no doors between us. A hope, at last, for touch, for love. For love.
Thank you.
Well,
I'm sorry.
you're sorry?
It's the same as old.
God?
It's nothing I can point to. There's nothing wrong with anything you're doing. Technically, you're great. I can see that.
So, what? What?
You don't belong. You don't belong there. Here.
I don't belong.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't know how else to put it. You stand, you audition, and all I think is she doesn't fit.
No.
She doesn't belong here. There's been a mistake. She's like a mental patient who's somehow gotten a lectureship, or...
No! No!
It hurts me.
Huh?
I thought it was good, Sandy.
Get out!
It's nothing personal.
Get out, you fucking asshole!
I'm being good, and I'm being honest. I'm being truthful.
This is a theater! Learn to lie a little!
Not theater, an audition. I will see you both in the office tomorrow. we'll need to pull a quote from the review.
I won't be it. I don't belong here.
All right, just call and let Susan know.
I'm so sorry for that.
He's awful.
He is. He's a genius, but
He's not a genius.
Excuse me, I just remembered what I came down here to tell you. Deb, I'm sorry. But there's just not going to be room in the budget or the season for your free pigs.
What?
I'm sorry.
Oh, you were playing with us again.
No,
Not funny.
not playing. I feel awful.
No, you said our last meeting, you looked directly at me, nodded, and said, let's do this.
I know.
The calendar and the budget were in front of you.
Well, it's not going to work out.
Ken!
Is this about you calling me an asshole? Because
No, don't flatter your wickedness. I wrote myself this note earlier. I just found it in my pocket. Tell Deb 3 pigs is no-go. I've got so much on my mind. I am sorry.
Fuck you.
Ken, I don't know how to say, so you'll believe me, but my 3 pigs, this project is necessary. It's necessary.
Maybe next year.
No. This season, as was promised.
You make it sound like I swore a blood oath. I didn't. And if I did, I have to take it back.
It is necessary.
To what? What's done there within that twig-strewn tomb we call a playhouse is necessary for nothing. It is hollowness. It is impotence. It is at best the obituary notice from my dead imagination. But it is not necessary.
To me, it's necessary to me.
Deb.
I have some things, some antiques. I could sell silver knives, a thimble. I'll sell them and I'll donate everything to you in the Civic if you'll just let me.
No, you don't want to do
I
that.
don't even need the stage. I'll do it here in this damn root cellar. We'll find somewhere to put the chairs. I'll pay for it. We'll do it here. Please. How can you deny me?
How can you plead so pathetically for this expired Xanax? This pointless
You have no
time
reason. No reason to refuse me. I will pay for it. It won't even be on the stage.
You can't even cast your lead.
I will. Tonight. I will cast the wolf tonight.
You can't be Santa.
Fine.
Get your play cast. We'll meet tomorrow. I promise nothing.
Just remember that we're meeting.
I'll make a note.
Well, let me. 10 a.m.
Make it 11. And you be there as well.
Deb, I love you, and it's going to be fine.
How? How?
Just cast him and be done. Then we can get some wine from the Mega Bev and drink in the garden till dawn.
Well, how comes this wine? Our medicine's is gone.
It will be okay.
It's hell.
It's war. It's just a little war. We'll tell our older selves of how we ended it. Together in the nursing home we'll sit, boil soup, deal cards, trim our ear hair, and say we won. Cast him.
I can't cast him until I know he is the part, and he's just not. He's not. Then there's no art, no magic here to help him, and we're done. We've lost. There's no magic here.
Elizabeth has entered. She sits in the chair in the audition spot.
Is it you? Bottled up in this basement like two hapless gin? Hello. Is it you?
Can we help you, dear?
Wasn't you upstairs in that awful pageant?
The Scottish play?
I couldn't follow it. Lost in the world. No surprise, I'm lost watching a play.
Can we help you?
Stories, plays really aren't suited for those broken in their minds. They should be. Stories should help the mentally unwell, put order to our wandering. But they just lead us deeper into the wood. What are you doing down here?
Oh, the auditions for a play.
Right, about the wolf and the cabal of swine. Tell me my name.
Did you sign up? I'm sorry, I don't have you on my list.
I smelled your flyer at the Y.
Do you have something prepared?
Like what?
A monologue is traditional.
Well, there's the one story.
That would be fine.
The one story I've kept in my head as I've tunneled blind through the slurry of years, trying to find a couple of faces I no longer recognize.
Whenever you're ready.
My name you know, and I'll be doing myself from Where the Hell Were You? By me. There once were three magical sisters. Three magical sisters who lived separately but would get together occasionally to uproot mountains, boil oceans, and overturn kingdoms. And one day, on Monday, they met up on a heath in Scotland and started a civil war in that country by introducing themselves to an ambitious thane. Afterwards, after Scotland was littered and soggy with the guts of the dead and the usurper's head was put on a spike, the sisters had their usual confusion about where and when to meet again to discuss whatever project might be next. This was always a problem for them, sure. As magical beings, they lived outside of time and space and so could never get their calendars in sync. But after the Scottish affair, they absolutely agreed to meet again on Tuesday afternoon at 3 at their usual spot at that same heath. Had practically made a pact to meet Tuesday at 3 o'clock. But only one of the sisters managed to make it. The other two wandered off, Hecate knows where, through countless backwaters over the centuries, until they finally, it appears, got overly involved with the community theater in a small town in the American Midwest, where I found them, chewing their minds, stoking their hearts with splinters of damp coal. Look at the two of you, thrown down this well, because it is you, my sisters.
Okay, Dandelion, that's plenty.
They'll call you.
Tell me my name. Your calico suckles the wart behind your left ear.
Oh, Ratty is an affectionate cat.
You have a hedgehog with whom you do unspeakable things.
Define unspeakable.
Tell me my name.
Elizabeth.
What is this?
I've been searching centuries, rode a hemlock needle over oceans, whipped my bartered soul through ditches and deserts looking for you. And alone, these 4 centuries, nursed the old evil, stirred the cauldron, brought pox and power to thrones, with none of your help. And this is where you're holed up? Here? For what? What?
I just wanted to be on the stage, in a play, one time.
Oh, stop.
The sisters did nothing on that heath. The blood blood, the madness, the war, they brought none of that. It brought itself. Their mutterings, kettle mixings was nothing. Nothing. It was a backdrop, atmosphere. They are not real.
That is our strength, our potion.
Just like the story, the ancient story, the pig, the wolf, to be retold, to be told right.
Tell it and be done that and come away.
I don't have my cast.
You've had 400 years.
The parts are complex.
There were no parts played in the Scottish affair. We were ourselves.
That never happened. We weren't there.
You have forgotten. You have forgotten because what we did was darkness. And darkness likes to dig. It burrows like a louse into the mind's tightest grain. But it's there yet. It will crawl back.
Here I am again. Oh, hello, Liz. Oh, we met before at the YMCA, where I gave her your audition flyer. And here she is auditioning, and it's all connected.
Is this thy warden?
Leave us alone, Ken.
Sandy, I just wanted to come back and say sorry. We left it bad. I left it bad. I'm sorry. If there's one true thing I can say in this room tonight, it's I am so sorry. Okay. You should look in upstairs. It's actually going very well.
As I foretold.
And Tim is doing amazing. Magic.
You see? You see? It's real.
Yeah, not really. At bottom, it's just the same old narcissistic carnival. I mean, someday there'll come a play that will not bounce in its seat and raise its hand, crying, "Ooh, here I am a play, look at me."
Just please, go.
Someday, I'll direct a production that will contain itself, will not embarrass itself with the usual ache for attention.
And I'm certain it's fantastic. What is it again?
What?
Upstairs.
It's opening night to play.
Which is...
Oh, come on.
No, I'm not kidding. I'm sorry, Ken, for whatever reason, this haze. I can't remember what play you're doing up there.
Yeah.
You're really that far gone. The Scottish play.
Yes. What is that?
The Scottish. Macbeth. Help me!
Mouth of iron, tongue of bone, teeth that chain to bind a throat of stone.
Ken first rises on his toes, holding his throat that falls, gasping on the floor. Sandy and Deb rush to him.
Ken, oh God, Ken, sweetheart.
Call someone!
There is no signal in this dungeon. I do!
Ken expires violently, blood from his mouth.
God, help! Mercy!
No, God, he's dead. He's dead.
How do you know?
I foresaw it in the pizza.
Thank you. All right. Get the panel up, and we're going to bring the panel up and talk about this.
Yeah.
Once you're seated, grab the microphone and turn it on.
Is this on? Yes.
Hello. If you don't know already, you're going to find out this is an auspicious group. It's my wife telling me it's to turn it on. It is on. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can I use it? If you don't know already, if you don't know already, this is an auspicious group, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. That's the way we're going to start. And I'm going to ask Jenny, starting with Jenny.
My microphone's working. My name is Jenny.
Does this one work?
Oh! My name is Jenny Magnus, and I am the co-founder and co-artistic director of the Curious Theater brand.
Dexter, what I want you to do is tell us what you're doing right now, but then take us back to the 80s too. Who were you in the 80s? What were you up to?
Oh boy, okay. Who were you in the 80s? My name is Dexter Bullard. I am currently head of the graduate acting program at DePaul. That's what I spend my time doing. But back in the 80s, I was actually at Northwestern with that character over there, and attending all of these amazing theaters, and then started a theater company called Plasticine. Second wave, right, Mickle? That's right. I just made that up. So you have to look at this real quick. I think that's actually right. There's seismic things going on here.
Yeah.
You know, back in the past, and so yeah, '95 was definitely something that came from the '80s for sure. That energy. Yeah, that's on.
I am.
Oh, okay.
Am I on? Is this on?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm Laura, and I, in the 80s, I started with Cardiff Giant, which I can thank my brother Bob Fisher, who's in the audience. Through those times, I worked with Theater Gublak and Plasticine, Curious Theater Branch. Did I say Looking Glass?
Oh, yeah.
Did I skip any? And so, what I find really funny is what I am doing now. I'll tell you two things. What I just finished was a production of The Sound of Music at the Marriott Lincolnshire Theatre. So clearly a direct path. What all that was leading up to. And the other thing that I have found myself doing in the last 5 years or so is with others heading up an activism project called Not in Our House, and headed up the writing of the Chicago Theater Standards, which is now in use in hundreds of theaters. South Korea, Australia, and Sweden.
This is Hello. I'm Tony Adler. In the 1980s, I was a theater critic for The Reader and a columnist for Chicago Magazine, and I was watching all these people. And now I'm just professionally old. I'm Mickle. I think people know, I helped co-found Theater Gublak. We started in Ann Arbor in the early 80s, but we moved to Chicago in 1988. So I already said all these guys really influenced me quite a bit. So I'll talk more about that later.
My name is Andy White. I'm the currently director of community engagement for the Looking Glass Theater Company, where I'm a co-founding ensemble member. And likewise, forgive the redundancy, but yeah, I was watching all of your work and all the theaters at the old Igloo space on Broadway, and just, all of the places, along with a couple other companies. There was the Actors Gang was around, Avalanche Ranch, we talked, New Crime, thank you. Yeah, you're right, Actors Gang was in LA Ranch.
New Crime, in my mind, again, sort of almost second wave.
Totally, well, 89.
Yeah,
89, yeah, they did.
Yes, but none of them around to invite on this panel. But New Crime, if you don't know, was an outspring of Tim Robbins' group, the Actors Gang in LA, which itself was influenced by the Théâtre du Soleil in France and their particular acting style.
Gestalt.
Yeah.
The Igloo, Avalanche Ranch, a bunch. You're right. There was just this outspring of energy that was happening at the time. Yeah.
Great. Thank you all. Thank you all for being here. I want to name some of the other theaters that were in Chicago at that time too. In the 80s, we're talking about. We're coming off the 70s, where you had Wisdom Bridge, and you had Steppenwolf and all of that was happening with that. Black Ensemble, Jackie Taylor's Black Ensemble was happening at that time. And then you're coming out of the 70s, and you've got Straw Dog, Next Theater, Improv Olympic, I.O., Lifeline, Ballywick, Raven, American Blues, Chicago Shakes, Mariachi, Neo-Futurist, Famous Door, St. Nick, at the same time that this cluster is happening, right? What we're focusing on is this cluster. And one of the things that Mickle was talking to me about was how there is this kind of commonality, and there's sort of a shared DNA, maybe even accidental. And I wonder if we could start with you, Mickle, you explaining what you even meant by that.
Yeah, so I tried, because I have just this vague feeling that there is this commonality, and Mark and I have pitched different things around that, we worked with, usually, by and large, with original text or original adaptation formed in-house. We weren't doing Arthur Miller or Sam Shepard or David Mamet. We were for the most part writing our own scripts through different processes, but in the end, presenting an original work. Very literary in a performance style that is hard to get a handle on. I think Dexter and Laura can maybe speak to this even really well. But I sat down this morning to try to figure out how personally I was affected, and I came up with something that I think that kids would call really basic, and it might be even a little embarrassing, but this is the truth. Thinking about how this group of theaters informed my own work, I think it might be chiefly in this way. Even above moments of beauty or insight or emotional intensity or relevance, these theaters prized and prioritized the unexpected. It was almost a tacit promise with each ticket purchase. You will be surprised. You will see something new in form or style or content or in all of the above. And maybe others see it differently, but that's how I thought of it and find my own process was indelibly influenced by that particular spirit of the time, to the inconvenient degree that I'm chronically inhibited and stalled by the fact that I can't simply sit down and write a solid, well-constructed first scene, even if it's emotionally true and politically and culturally on point, etc. Whatever I write from the top has to surprise me personally, and I imagine this might be the same for all the theater makers from this moment in that particular time. Anyway, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, thank you. We will talk about it. Tony, I want to go to you for kind of this global perspective, because you were writing about them and so much else that was going on in Chicago theater then. And when I was doing my interviews, a number of people told me, O'Reilly among them, that Tony was paying attention to us, he was aware of us, and he gave us a spotlight. And I'm wondering what it was that caught your attention and why you liked it so much.
Well, I think what Mickle just said about the unexpected. I mean, I remember going into seeing an Oobleck show and like, this is like nothing I've ever seen before. And the same with Plasticine later. And Curious Theater Branch was another animal entirely, in the sense that it was like seeing a family on stage. And so, I mean, everything was and also I had the privilege of, they were all about 10 years younger than me. And,
Except me.
Except you, but. And I remember going to like looking glass rehearsals on 16th Street and things like that, and seeing these young burgeonings, and it was very exciting, and it was very, everything was beginning to coalesce in the other older theaters. The older theaters were becoming more institutional, and this was so not. And so I was excited.
And you paid attention.
And I paid attention. You get excited and pay attention.
Jenny and Dexter, I'm wondering, as you were devising what you were going to do, was it a reaction to something, or was it, you're nodding, Dexter? into something or what?
Is this on? Hello?
No.
But now, trick them up there. Check, check. Check, check. I can just speak in this room. I think I can speak in this room. Of course there's a reaction. I think I told you, Mark, that, you know, in Chicago, what do they say? The city in the garden? That's the name of it, right?
Really?
Yeah, sure. That's the motto of Chicago, isn't it?
Yes, thank you.
And I always use this metaphor to say, like, well, whatever I grew here came from the fertilizer of whatever else was around, these experiments, right? And mentioning a company, performance company like Goat Island, right, was a major influence on plasticine for sure. I come from, in Looking Glass, there's ties across there in terms of looking at the body and looking at what the idea would be about that. So sure, it's absolutely was, I think the cardinal thing, actually, Mickle, is more about process. Let's make something a new way. You get a different product out of a different sort of algorithm to make it. So I saw that, and that was a model, seeing the early Oobleck shows, or Cardiff Giant 2, knowing that someone used improvisation, you know, to make something like this was different than anything I was taught. So you talk about like grad school, that was grad school. You know, in Chicago, was coming in and entering into a world where companies like this were a theater company and we're all writers and we're a rock band at the same time. You know, that's cool.
That is cool.
That's cool. And you want to be part of that cool. And so it was an inspiration to be able to say a little bit later, yeah, I can form a company and have a different idea, another little, you know, sideline on it. And each one, I think, served its own little niche even within that. I often compare it to wine or something like that. Why is everybody making the same, you know, wine, regional theaters, copycatting? Same play, you know, everywhere appearing, coming to you. And what we were doing was making something actually unique. You have to go get that very bottle and open it that very time. The way the theater is, as Mickle and these actors, I mean, just brilliant show. It happens right here.
Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to ask a question, which is that about influences and about what was, as you said, what was in the dirt at the time. The International Theater Festival of Chicago started in 1986, and I was wondering.
It was so great.
Yeah, it was huge. Yeah.
It was one of the best things that happened.
Yeah, and we took it for granted. I can't remember who I was talking to, but when we came, we were just all kids. And I just thought it was something that was in Chicago, had been there for 50 years and would be there for 50 years more. And so I was stunned when it stopped me. But I remember Dog Troop, I remember, I mean, David Isaacson's here, he saw so many of the shows. What was it, the Richard III, the whole War of the Roses cycle, or, yeah, it was amazing. That was huge, but I don't want to discount the influences of Second City and Steppenwolf and all that stuff. That stuff was very much in the air. We would go to the 11 o'clock at night free improv Second City, and it was young Mike Myers, who nobody knew who that was yet, but he was hilarious and on stage, and it was inspiring. And but we just wanted to do something different, I suppose. We didn't want to be Steppenwolf. We didn't hate Steppenwolf or whatever. It just wasn't. It just we just felt this craving to do something else. So I think everything's always, the influence can work both ways. You want to be that thing, but you also want to react against it.
Yeah, I want to just say a little bit about the idea of something being a product versus something being something other than that. I think that was a huge topic of conversation for us at the time. We were less interested in perfecting anything and having it be repeatable per se. What we wanted to do is have experiences, and we were really, really interested in what's the opposite of an art product? You know, something that can only exist with you. That's it. There is no way to make it unless those people are there doing it. That was super explicit with us. And I do want to just add, every time you say cluster, my mind goes cluster fuck. I just want to say that because I couldn't get that out of my mind. But yeah, so that was part of it for us. And also, I was talking to Mickle a couple weeks ago about this, and I was saying, you know, the whole idea of an affinity group, you know, like making work with the people that you're friends with or close to. A lot of people met people at school, for example. That was one way that, and that still happens for sure. That's what Steppenwolf, the famous story, and other people. But with Curious, it really wasn't that. It was just a bunch of sort of like-minded weirdos who tended to be interested in the same things. Or we always were kind of vampiric. If somebody even showed the slightest interest, we would like suck our fangs into that person and suck every last bit of juice out for sure, because the work is endless, of course. So that was interesting to us at the time as well. How do you make work with the people that you want to hang around with? You know, it's not a professionalism, it's really an unprofessionalism. It's really about affinity group.
Andy, that reminds me of stuff that we've talked about in terms of the genesis of Looking Glass, too. It was a college group, there was an affinity there. Before I let you answer it, though, I do want to acknowledge Jane Solins for the International Theater Festival. It's astonishing to be here. That was a while back. We've talked about how Looking Glass was born out of this affinity group at Northwestern. And were you aware of all of these others, and were you trying to be a part of that, or create your own original thing? What's going on there?
No, and I think you've already captured it well. We were a part of the community, so I would go see, bootleg shows, and, with 17 words in the title, and just the smartest damn stuff I had ever seen. Just like, and long, some of those shows were long, but I would always leave, in some, February night, exiting the theater on Broadway, whatever that igloo space was, breath steaming out, but just awe, in awe of what I had seen. And so it was absolutely inspiring, just as this you're right, Dexter, this segment was. Because it's this rare alchemy, I think, of magic and intellect. I just, the many plays that I've seen from the many creators here that leave you leaving the theater with your breath slightly or more taken away. And it was in part in response, I think, to and I loved me some good Steppenwolf then, I still do now, but there was absolutely a reaction to the realism of the 70s and feeling like, okay, you're right, we want to do something different, and something that feels live and is different every time. And that was very much a part of the sort of burst out, the very first production we did of Alice, which is sort of our creation myth, has to do with that sense of discovery and constant encounter and re-encounter and disorientation and discombobulation. The very first production, Dexter, that you probably saw at Northwestern it started with this big sheet of paper through which the growling Jabberwock behind it sort of burst through. And that visceral sense of it's kind of right now it's reminding me anyway of the alien that comes through that kind of but that sense of visceral response and physical excitement was, I think, definitely something we wanted to upend people with.
Laura, for those who don't know about Cardiff Giant, can you help us understand who they were?
Yeah, can I use the mic? Does it work?
Can I just say something about Laura really quick that I think should be said? That I think's already been hinted at. I think she's the Rosetta Stone of all of this as a performer, because she does act at Steppenwolf, she acts at the Goodman, she's acted in
every goddamn day.
And she's going to explain the Cardiff Giant system too. So if there is one performer that I can think of that she just does it all and she glides effortlessly between styles, if we can call that, she's probably best suited to articulate what the hell that's all about.
Thank you, Mickle. I'm slightly embarrassed, but thank you. I need to speak to, there's more Cardiff Giant, speaking of the Solinses, sorry, Bob, hop in if I mess anything up, but Bernie Solins, who was so instrumental in Second City, in this is how I was told it, in a romantic move, nostalgic move, went back to the University of Chicago, where the Compass Players had started, to start a new campus improv group, because there had been the Compass Players, and the folks that were involved in that, I'm not going to remember everybody's name, but included, not me, but included my brother Bob Fisher, Mark Holman, and Greg Kotis, who went on to write Urinetown and other plays, Scott Herms, John Hildreth, who else, Bob? Who am I forgetting?
You're doing great.
Thank you. So anyway, they started this, with Bernie's help, started this improv group, and the mostly guys who were in this were not theater majors. They were, law students, political science students, musical students, biochemical engineering students. They were all brilliant. They were all, if not to be reductive, but they were all funny, clever people who sort of found themselves curious about this thing being formed. So they did that. They worked together well, liked each other, were super funny, and wanted to keep going when school was done. It really was that simple. They talked about, because I wasn't in it yet, doing more sketch work, that they were going to write sketches, and they were going to bring it to the north side, and there was all this sort of energy about, we're not going to be like Second City, we're going to do it different, we're going to, but nobody really knew exactly what that meant. Cut to, my brother, Bob Fisher, found himself, for lack of knowing more, in the first company, I think he replaced somebody mid-rehearsal, in Co-Ed Prison Sluts, which was a comedy play written with improvisation. So Bob, so you're seeing strains here of Compass Players, Second City, Bernie Solins, Mick Napier, The Annoyance. And so Bob comes back to Carter Giant and says, we could do this. We could write a play. And cut to, they were like, well, we don't have any actors. And my brother said, my sister's an actor. Which, and he came to me and I said, no way, you're going to have to audition me. So they did citywide auditions. They ended up casting me. And our priority was process. We would talk nonstop about how to get from here to there. And we had very particular, our process to write a play was about 4 months. And we would start with simple, well-known improv games. And then within about a month, we were committed to 1 or 2 characters. One that would end up in the play, and another who was often referenced because it had been so involved in the improv. Everybody knew who they were. But we had rules, and this was the best part, I think. We were kind of trying, maybe with some arrogance, to be a little bit of the anti-Second City. So we wanted to do things like, no dick jokes. But then we took it farther. That's where, in my memory, where it sort of started. We're not going to do that sort of living newspaper, or we're not going to do this sort of prurient stuff. I, was a feminist at the time, and I was like, I don't want to be this and that and the other thing. And so there were rules like, you could not, everything we created. If it was a town, you made it up. A state, you made it up. A lake, you made it up. Everything we said, and this was we improvised for 7 years, Thursday nights, at Jimmy's Woodlawn Tap on 55th or Garfield? 55th. And we kept those rules really strict and really tight. And because the group, myself notwithstanding, was so smart, so intellectual, so hungry for not just knowledge, it would be really easy for folks like that, all coming out of University of Chicago, to out-fact each other on stage, to out-know things. And we saw that a lot in improv, and a lot of creative or funny or sensitive or worthy people were shut out of improv because they didn't know a lot of factoids. And so we thought, what if we didn't do that? And then Bob, actually, there was an argument when Bob came back and said we could do this, we could write a play. There was a bit of a scuffle. And, you know, the idea won. And our first play we wrote was called LBJFKKK. And we started with a title because we never knew where it, so our titles were always really silly because we never knew where anything was ever going to go. And it was crazy. We would have opening nights, the scene list hidden from the audience, but we could see it because we were rewriting and re-improvising up until like 20 minutes before opening of every show we did. It was insane, and I don't want to take up too much time here, but if we wrote, I believe the company wrote 7 plays altogether. 1 was a musical. We did have a director for each one, but the director was a bit more like the head writer because we all had a voice. We did have to cede sometimes to the director because they were thinking story the whole time. Somebody had to. But I've never heard of any company anywhere that has done a similar process. And it has been my lifelong held wish that some young theater would be interested in such a process. It's hard for older folks because we have jobs at 4 months of rehearsal, and not getting paid was just not something anybody can do. But it's for the young.
Just to tie
For those who don't know,
tie this in a little bit, just quickly.
Yeah.
LBJFKKK, David, you can correct my memory if this is wrong. You were performing that around the corner of the then Oobleck Place space, which was the Igloo Straw Dog space, when we had opened our When Will the Rest Come to 2 Through Your Anus.
Yep.
And Tony had sent out different reviewers, and we got the lead review and the reader when it really meant something, 1 week after the other. And one of my fondest memories was going to see LBJFKKK, and you guys took your curtain call. Mark Holman then bent over, turned his back to the audience. All of you did it. Turned your back to the audience, showed us your ass, and then pulled a plastic rat out of his between his legs. So at that moment we were joined.
Can I ask if Cardiff Giant had a connection with Ed?
Ed?
Ed, the improv troupe.
No. Bob?
No.
John Lear?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Jim Denton.
Lauren?
And
I was wondering about them today because they were about the same time.
yeah,
A little later,
just
yeah.
a little later.
I was going to just piggyback a little bit on something that you just reminded me of, Mickle, which is, we don't often, the theater artists don't often get to talk to the critics. And I, publicly or privately that often. We run into each other on the train fairly often. But I want to say, Tony, that your work as a critic was actually hugely impactful. I don't know if it was influential, but it made a difference when Tony Adler came to see your shows. And because you're an extraordinarily insightful critic, and I think pointed out to us a lot of times things that we weren't necessarily even conscious of, because you're looking at it from your point of view, and you're seeing it from a much more obviously objective, not entirely, but more objective point of view than ours. And it really made a difference. It was the kind of thing that, would put some wind in your sails, even when you didn't love our shows, and there were some that you didn't, but I'm going to actually pull it up right now. But you knew that there was somebody watching and adding it up and putting you into context of what your efforts were, where it lay in the rest of the community. So I just want to thank you for that, because it really contributed to the sense of community, because you were sort of the person who was threading all these things together. Before there was a Mark Larson, who, his master quilt did that with his book, but you were on the scene doing that in a very different way from some of your peers. and in a way that was, at least we all thought at the time, much, I don't know if pure is quite the right word, but just from a vantage point of artistic critic as opposed to whatever other agendas other critics might have. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think a lot of that has to do with what the reader was and wanted to be at the time. That we weren't trying to, a lot of theater criticism is a form of salesmanship, and we weren't interested in that. It was more about, what happened when we were there.
I mean, in that way, upstart journal, or journalism in some ways, commenting or reviewing upstart theater. So there was
This is a really good point. Yeah.
parallel spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between reviews and criticism. That was how
Yes.
we formulated it to ourselves. That some people would give you a review, I liked it, I didn't like it. But criticism is about context, and it's about locating people in the course of the arc of their own careers. You always kept track of what somebody had written before and where this landed in the terms of that, and that was always very important to us at the time. And we did hang out with you at your party every once in a while. That was very nice.
Tony, real quick, what was your word count at that time?
My what?
Word count. Did you have a word limit
Lead review.
when you were writing reviews?
How many words?
How many words?
I
words.
I thought you were saying workout. What was my workout at the time?
I was just
No, when I first got there, the reader review was about 1,000 words.
Wow.
That was just the lead review.
Yeah.
The leader
And the attempt was to be comprehensive.
Yeah.
So that there would be, early on, maybe 7 or so reviews in the front section.
Yeah.
And that got impossible after a while, mainly for budgetary reasons. Because the people that we had there were people like, Jack Helbig and Justin Hayford and Carrie Reed and
Tom Boker.
Tom Boker, who's a psychologist now.
Right.
He was the most reviled theater critic the reader ever had, and glad of it.
He made Cardiff Giant.
Did he?
He made
Oh
Cardiff
yeah,
Giant.
I just read that review today.
You did.
Yeah, he liked us too.
Because
I got a Tom Boker story. Well, no, it's another made it. The first thing I ever produced in Chicago was a play called Schumacher. It was a late night, and it was at the Playwright Center. It only ran for 4 weekends, I think, maybe 8 performances. And he wrote the lead review in the Reader about it. So 1,000 words were written about a 45-minute piece that a 23-year-old college student had put together with some friends.
Yeah.
That is unbelievable.
That's
culture.
unbelievable.
That's unbelievably culture that I got that focused that early on. And it was a pretty good review. So I'm going to have to Tom Boker.
Well, relating back to Tony, for Oobleck, when we moved to town, we were basically that. We were Schumacher. We were in the back of what was then the Cabaret Voltaire on the corner of Elston and Cortlandt, and we had put up a series of short plays, which did well. I think Achille Bejas reviewed them. She gave it a sort of middling review, whatever. She liked something, whatever. We were like, okay, whatever. And the first full-length play we did, or the second full-length play we did after David Isaacson Three Who Dared, was The Pope Is Not a Eunuch. And Albert Williams reviewed David's show, gave it a great review, as I remember, and that kind of put us on the map. And then Pope Is Not a Eunuch, we heard that the lead critic from the Reader was coming. Tony Adler was coming, and we had a guy upstairs who was rehearsing his drums every day. And I remember running up to his, like, pleading with him. Sarah, you're here, you might remember this, but like, just all of the cast just like, please don't rehearse, please don't rehearse. And he's like, really, the lead critic is coming? We're like, yeah, the lead critic is coming. And Tony came, and there was like 8 people in the audience. And I was in the show, and I have this visual memory of final moment where Jeff Dorchen's playing this baby, something funny happens, like, that's quite hilarious, and Tony Adler just completely losing his shit, just completely like, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. And then he goes away, and then we get a phone call from the reader saying, do you guys have any photographs of the show? And you're like, no, we don't have it. So they sent out a photographer. They sent out a great photographer, took this great photo of the whole cast, and then we got the lead review, and then it was great. And then Tom Boker came and reviewed Slow and Painful Death for Sam Shepard. But yeah, the enormous importance of the reader for this, like Andy, I can't emphasize that enough. Young upstart theater, interested in the new, interested in the Chicago voice, the new Chicago voice, and the reader was just there, leveling the playing field, completely, open, I mean, Dexter, it must have made you and Goat Island and everybody who came in the so-called second wave feel like we can do anything.
Yeah.
We can do anything.
Yeah.
Right?
It felt, I'm sorry, guys.
No, you were able to read what was going on and have a real, it was enough said,
Right.
to feel excited and to be able to follow it, almost like there's a sports section for sports fans, and the reader there was a theater section for theater fans. It could make fans and make people feel better.
What I feel like I know now, or we all know now that I didn't know then, and I don't know if any of us knew it then, because we were just doing what we did, is how these critics had been doing this longer than we had been doing this, and they were kind of, it seemed, a bit bored or unsurprised. And so we didn't know, the reason why Tom Boker said these unbelievable hyperbolic things, sort of comparing us to the things that were making him unhappy, I suppose. He said it in other words, it was pretty dramatic what he said. I don't remember what he said. But I think we had no plan to do well. I don't think we really understood. We had fantasies, but in our reality, we didn't think anybody was going to come and see it, or like it, or anything. So he came on the very first, an opening night of the very first show we wrote. There were maybe 4 people in the audience, maybe 16, people we knew, or friends, or whatever. And the very next night, we were sold out, and we were sold out for 16 weeks.
That's something I'd like to address, is like the financial aspect of it, because none of these companies, certainly Curious, we spent nothing. I mean, we made posters and actually postered at that time, which now I think about, like, what the hell was that job doing? But how was that supposed to draw the people in? Although in Wicker Park it did, a little bit. But a review, good, bad, or indifferent, was free advertising. And especially the length of those reviews that really spoke about the work at a deep level, not just, oh yeah, it was too cold in the theater. That was what you would get now, a little bit more. But those things really provided many, many more people the opportunity to even know about something, much less go see it or think they might like it. How would they even find out about it unless they read about it in a newspaper widely distributed? So for us, that was like a make or break thing always. But to not get a review, and then there's also the legacy aspect of it, which I'm sure most of you aren't thinking about, but as I'm in my dotage, I am in fact thinking about it. A review is forever. It's in an archive of, now online, but also down at the Chicago Public Library. There's a Chicago Theater Archive. Curious is collected there. I'm sure other people too. That stuff is going to be there past when we're gone. That's published material that says your name and says that you did this thing. Theater's ephemeral. It is. It's gone. It's never to be seen again, right? But if there's evidence by someone having written something about you, that outlives you, and that's really significantly important, I think.
I'm glad you mentioned that too. I'd like to say that at the Chicago Public Library there is like a wing for Chicago theater history that you can check out. A wonderful woman named Sarah Zimmerman oversees all of this, and she loves every single thing that's in there. And she'd love to show you around, so do check it. It is archived, it's there forever.
Curious is just in a process right now. We already have some stuff there, but they're basically going to archive our entire collection of crap. Everything. It's going to be available to the public indefinitely, white glove, public, whatever. So this is really exciting, I think, that they have, it's only theater. It's only Chicago theater. It's not Chicago dance. It's not music. It's Chicago theater, homegrown.
goes back to Iroquois Fire, it goes way back up to the present, so do check it out. For the gentleman in the booth, I'm going to turn to the audience in just a second and hear what's on your mind, what your questions are. But I did want to mention this. Blair Thomas was not able to be with us, co-founder of Red Moon, and that started in 1990, so it's right at the...
Can I tell you the story? Can I tell you the story? So
yes, please do.
Curious Theater Branch is the Curious Theater branch of Maestro Subcom and Hall, which was our band at the time. And the band didn't want to do theater stuff, so we created a theater company to do the theater stuff. And Mark Coleman was in our band, as a matter of fact, and Blair Thomas played the euphonium in our band. And he had a little discussion with us one night about, like, I'm going to do this puppet company. What should I name it? And that was where he came up with the name. It was in a conversation at a rehearsal, coming up with the name of Red Moon. And so from the very beginning, he was a wonderful euphonium player, but he did move on to bigger and better things.
And just to tie it back, one of the first things he did when I first heard of Red Moon was when I asked Blair, can you make a robot costume for When Will the Rats Come to Choose Your Anus? And he said yes, and I said, so how do you, and he said, but credit me in the program as Red Moon Theater. And I remember thinking, how weird, like, why would you want to, like, use your name, man? But, good luck with that.
I did want to give Blair's voice in here. Here's a quick thing. This is from my interview with Blair. He said, you had all the cool people who were not functioning in the money economy at all. They were just making shows, and no one was getting paid anything. This is what you're talking about. Pardon me. No one expected to get paid anything. That itself was kind of a radical idea, right? You didn't really really audition. You just knew someone, and you kind of hung out with people. Then you did a little of this and a little of that. Next thing you know, you're in a show, right? That community was made up of Curious Theater Branch, Theater Oobleck, the Neo-Futurists. It was that kind of world. That kind of world. Everyone worked on everyone else's shows. Everyone helped out. I like that. I wanted to get Blair's voice in there. Before we turn the lights up, let's talk about money for a second. What is this thing of pay what you can? And how is that part of your aesthetic? Pay what you can, or
well, I can speak for us. We were, our politics were anarchist, very leftist, but also we had no money. So to us, it was a real impediment to see shows, and we thought, well, we want people to come see our shows, but especially the people that would probably like them are probably people like us who don't have any money. So that's my memory of where it came from.
Same, and I think, we've carried that policy all the way through 34, now coming up on 35 years. The Rhinoceros Theater Festival has always been pay what you can, and there just shouldn't be a reason to not go and see work, is money. And honestly, it works out. we're not getting rich, no one's getting rich, but some people pay more and some people pay less, but bottom line is, the look on somebody's face when they say, I only have $5, and you're like, great, that's great. And people coming in for less than that even is, I'd rather they came to the show. For sure.
We were clearly the capitalists because we charged $7 for
It's also like, there's this thing where the formula, like 40% earned income, 60% donated, right?
Yeah.
For not-for-profits. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Obviously this experiment is not about something like that. And so I think also these ticket prices, plastic was never more than 15, and you could see it for 10, and you could pay us later, and you can walk in. So it wasn't about that anyway, and I think it's to say to the funding community, come on, right? This is a cultural offering. And we're not making any money really ourselves.
And I think
so there's the in-kind coming back. No, it's okay. We agree totally.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
I think we educated the funding community. I know writing many, many grants and many conversations with many funders, really trying to explain what that was about and why it meant we were not going to be making a profit and that we were actually not interested in getting bigger. We really wanted, our line in Curious always was, we're going to be deeper, not bigger, and they bought it after a point, which is kind of amazing. But yeah, really having to educate them over over time, like, this is valid. The metric of how you measure success cannot only be growth. It just cannot be that for me.
What was the looking glass charging?
Yeah, it just feels like ages ago. But we also had a $10, policy for a good long time, and then it aged up more and more. Now 15, and then $25 is our what people. So and we still have an accessible policy, but it's harder to get than it used to be or than it should be. All the things that you've named, all the dynamics you've named are absolutely true. And I was.
You go.
I'll say that for Jane's point, in terms that Tony's reviews, that was another function of them, in addition to bringing an audience, and in addition to being, giving us a legacy, was those we could send to funders as well. And they gave us a sense of legitimacy, however false it might have been. Because, you could point to that and say, see, Tony Adler says.
Well, I just want to say one thing. In defense of Looking Glass, they were the first, I don't think they're the only, but they were the first theater in Chicago to make a decision where they were going to pay everybody who is equity the same as everybody who is non-equity. And as a non-equity person, I cannot tell you how important that is. And it's very rare, and it just should be noted.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What drove, the increase in ticket prices, we did start paying people, and so money's got to come from somewhere. So.
Yeah.
Can you bring up the house lights a little bit? Because I'd love to hear what's on your mind or memories that you'd like to share, and speak it loudly. Is there anybody who'd like to start? Yes?
Hi. So we're just discussing how finance and the lack of concern of that contributed to the character of Chicago theater. Would you also consider the sort of looser or blurrier divisions between like writer and actor, especially in something like a bootleg, to contribute to the unorthodox genre?
That's a great point.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Not just Oobleck too. I think the neo-futurists were all performers and writers. The curious people were all performers and writers. And I don't know about Looking Glass, but it felt like, just seeing Arabian Nights, it just felt, I know Mary Zimmerman wrote that show brilliantly and so influential to us. I don't know if she's an actor or if she was ever dragged on stage. Yes, some. But it felt, the way she directed it also made it did that same thing even on a larger scale of blurring there's something about, even in a scripted show like Arabian Nights, which Mary Zimmerman wrote, and then later Notebooks of Leonardo da Vinci, there's something in this performance style that I can't quite put my finger on that I think you just sort of did. That even though the words are very important and the script and the text is cherished, there's something about how the performer delivers it to the audience that feels like those lines are blurred, that almost that they are coming up with the idea themselves in a way.
May I add one other thing? We used to talk about it, the old Hollywood system. Back in the beginning of Hollywood had a notion called vertical integration, where they owned all the means of production. They owned the film stock and the studio and the distribution and all that stuff. And I was really fascinated by that idea. So I sort of adapted it to our purposes and thought, what if we all were responsible for everything, basically? Like, I'm also the composer and the designer, and I'm now, on the one hand, it's also exploitative because it's exhausting to do everything. But when you have people who can, tend to do this or that better than other things, but you're all responsible for it, and then there's no one person who's like running the whole thing. Everyone's pitching in to do as much of each individual, aspect of it. Because theater is a group endeavor. I mean, that's a fundamental, basic reality of it. So if everybody's pitching in and there's less of a hierarchical kind of, that's your job, and this is your job, then I think it does make a different style. It really, I can't help but do.
I mean, I have a radical thought about this, and definitely plasticine. Laura wrote a show, or more than that, too. Really, right?
With everyone else.
With everyone else. Yeah, the writers were everybody. We're all writing this together. And what that gives is the actors this agency that you don't find in normal casting. Like casting was ridiculous. There was no casting plasticine. Who wants to play? You're in. That's the composition of what we're going to make. We also had the set the first day, rather than at the end. So we found a play hidden in a set that we already built before even first rehearsal, which was also just kind
It
of
was a wonderful way of working.
It's just reversals. But you know, you look, this is my Shakespeare thing. People say, how can one man have a 275,000 word vocabulary, no Italian and Latin? I'm like, because it was probably 15 people. And actually, As You Like It wasn't written down for 7 years. How did they keep that play? Oh, I think I might know. The actors remembered the lines for 7 years because they were afraid it was going to get stolen. And you tell me that when Shakespeare's day, they were able to say to an actor, oh, don't say that, I'm the authority, I wrote this down? No. Actors aren't like that, and I still believe that's part of the spirit of this, is that, you know, I think certainly in Oobleck, Mickle, like, the players had a say.
Well, yeah, we had what's called actors' prerogatives, so we'd come in with, the first thing would be the play itself. The playwright would come into the room and say, here's my great golden vision.
Yeah.
But the rule was actors' prerogative. The actors would always have the last say as to what lines they wanted to say, if they wanted to change a line, if they wanted to strike a line, if they wanted to write their own monologue. That was always, they always held the sort of final say. The playwright would be a very powerful lobbyist saying, please don't do that. But for me, I mean, as a playwright, I've worked with both the Oobleck system and also with directors who I love. But it is true that the director often stands as a buffer between you and the actor, that they sort of pass your notes on to the actors and sort of Marcel and you're way in the back watching the rehearsal. But with the Oobleck system, you really have to persuade the actors that what you've written is actually great, and they have to agree with it.
You know what my favorite rule in Oobleck was? No discussion.
Oh.
I fucking love that one. You don't remember that?
No.
What does it mean?
Oh, it
That
meant,
sounds
at least
like
as
you're
I
joking.
remember it being told to me was, you do a rehearsal, it's like you could say no discussion, like no notes.
Oh, you could, yeah. I mean,
Like just don't,
no
I'm
notes,
not
yeah.
I can't do it right now, like I just
Right.
want to do the play, and you can tell me later.
Yeah.
That was so awesome.
My favorite was Outside Eyes, right, Michael?
Right, so then outside eyes are the other things that we use is that, because we don't work with a director, anybody can invite anybody to come and be an outside eye to any rehearsal, and then after rehearsal's done, we begin with the person who knows the least about the play, and then we go around the room to the others and sort of give them their little spotlight, and they get to say whatever they want.
My memory of, I did an Oobleck play and I wasn't used to the system. And at the time, I mean, Jenny Magnus and Lisa Black to me were like the two goddesses of Chicago theater to me. You know, truly, I was enamored and intimidated. And so I learned afterwards that I was going to be receiving notes, and somebody said it was Lisa Black and it was a couple of other people, and they were like, Lisa, you give her notes. Because like Lisa was such an actress. She was such an actress, and they said, Lisa's going to know how to talk to her. Lisa's going to know what to say.
Lisa studies acting, yeah.
And I just about died. But it was really, she did. She knew exactly what I needed. She knew exactly, because she knew I was, you know, had training, and she knew exactly how to talk to me. And I felt then immediately in the family that it wasn't one director's opinion on my performance, on this thing. It was just this complete group support, not judgment, not, you know, but support. It was really something.
Before we close, I would like to know if does anybody have a memory of the first time you saw a play by Mickle, Maher, or read one? Because go ahead.
I'm not going to give it its correct title, but it was Dr. Faustus. Somebody had mentioned it to me, said, oh, you got to go see this play. Get there early, there are no seats, or not enough seats. I think it was on Division, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh my God, you saw it then?
Yes. Yeah. So I went along, and I gotta say, like the idea you had mentioned about seeing the play, when you write a play, you want to surprise yourself. I can honestly say I have never seen anything like that. It was the best environment. I didn't care that people were bringing in mattresses to sit on. And it was just this, the sense of it being in the round and the community of us watching it. And it wasn't even in the round, it was whatever space you could get into. So it was somewhat in the round and other shapes. And the two actors were just unbelievable.
Thank you.
And the set, the design, the costumes, the candles, the part of the piano, and him just sitting there playing the drums.
So that was a long time. Yeah, that goes back to the it was a space called 6 Oda on Division. It was basically this place where people live, and all sort of VFW hall, I think, or
yeah, it looked like one.
Yeah. So just like anyway.
Well,
Usually just had
it's in the book, right?
Yeah. No, that is obscure Chicago theater history.
Wasn't my first Oobleck show, but The Stranger was certainly one of here.
We haven't talked about the importance of the Chopin to all of these communities. We're going to have a reception afterwards where Mark and I will be signing and selling books. And there's going to be a great spread of food. And please buy a drink. It supports the Chopin. And if you want to support the Chopin even more, please go to their website. There's a GoFundMe button you can click. Obviously, the COVID has affected them.
I just wanted to start. Michael, fired me.
Yeah, Oobleck as a whole, as a collective, fired you.
Ziggy had bought this space. This was an old, unused, abandoned bank. And he single-handedly was going to turn it into a theater. Yes, many years ago.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Anyway, well, we can talk it in the reception. So
I'd like to close with this. Jenny has agreed to read this. This is something that she said in my interview with her, and it's really a passage that I just love, and I think it's a great way to end this. Go ahead.
Okay, this is from Mark's book. It's the idea of sustainability, of staying with it. We're this little irritating grit of sand in the clam of Chicago that over time is slowly taking the patina of a pearl. By virtue of the fact that we've stood our ground and have not been moved by the winds of change or by time particularly, just responding to our own desires about what we want to make and how we want to do it. Fortitude is our highest value. We're in it because we want to be. We see this as our trade. This is our skill. We're wonderful at this thing. We've learned over many years how to do this thing very well. Theater is this very fragile thing. So much can crush it. A loud voice can crush it. A lack of faith can crush it. And people's incredible impatience can crush it. But if you keep coming back and just making your beautiful little theatrical moments year after year after year, it's holding up your end of the deal. It's about putting the idea on the page and the actor in the body and the audience in the space. Those three things. That's timeless. Once the empire crumbles and we're all back to sitting around the fucking fire, that's what we're gonna have.
On behalf of Mickle and myself, I just want to throw out some thank yous, and they're very sincere thank yous. Obviously, Agate Publishing, thank you. Thank you so very much. Chopin, Humanity, and Rita, thanks very much. Sarah Elizabeth Larson Photography, she's taking pictures. And the two gentlemen you saw scurry off are Danny Fender and Adam Crawford. And they're going to be selling books downstairs. But this is the coolest thing. Some of you may know, they're about to open a theater-focused bookstore in Andersonville this fall. So, thank them. They're down there. I hope you'll go down there. I hope you'll buy a drink. I hope you'll buy a book. And we'll see you downstairs. Thank you so much. Thank you.